9. Tristan Heidel. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in July 2023, police in Huron, Ohio were alerted to an alarm that was going off at a local credit union. At first, responding officers didn't see anything suspicious, but alarms typically don't activate for no reason, so the cops continued to investigate the scene. And during the search, they began hearing strange noises from the direction of the credit union's drive-thru. It sounded like heavy footsteps and was coming from inside the ceiling in the section of the building that sits over the drive-thru lanes. A large recycle bin was placed on the pavement beneath an open hatch in the ceiling, and as officers stood back and observed, a backpack fell through the hatch and into the recycle bin. Then, moments later, a pair of feet dangled out of the opening and a grown man spilled into the receptacle. The alleged burglar, 27-year-old Tristan Heidel, wisely showed that he was willing to cooperate with the police. But he was unable to obey their commands to get on the ground until they pulled him out of the bin. Huron Police Chief Terry Graham told local station Fox 8 that Heidel had failed to access any money or valuables inside the bank and was empty-handed when he emerged from the ceiling. He was still charged with breaking and entering though, as well as possession of criminal tools and safecracking. 8. Unimpressed customers ignore thief. A man who tried to rob the Nail First salon in Atlanta on July 3, 2023, left empty-handed after the people inside paid no attention to him. Surveillance footage showed the suspect entering the salon in blue jeans, sunglasses, and a backward-facing blue baseball cap. He stood at the doorway with a bag in his hand and yelled for everyone to get on the floor and give him their money. Customers in the waiting area could be seen staring at the suspect, but were seemingly unfazed as they ignored his repeated commands to get down and pay up. After failing to get the patrons to listen, the man walked toward another part of the salon and tried bossing someone else around. But it still didn't work, and he left the business with no more cash than he walked in with. He then fled the scene in a silver sedan and hasn't been captured yet. But police are hoping members of the public come forward with information about the man's identity so they can hold him accountable for the attempted robbery. 7. Patrick Hanawahine. A 46-year-old Hawaii resident named Kevin Fitzgerald was sitting in his truck outside a gas station in Kaneohe, Oahu one evening in March 2023 when a man opened the door and asked him for money. The suspect, later identified as 30-year-old Patrick Hanawahine, grabbed Fitzgerald's wallet, phone, and cash from the vehicle's cup holder. A brief struggle ensued between the two men before Hanawahine broke free and rushed into the passenger seat of a nearby truck. Fitzgerald managed to get some of his belongings back during the fight, but Hanawahine took his phone. But determined not to let the suspect get away with his crimes, Fitzgerald chased after the getaway vehicle. During the pursuit, the truck that Hanawahine was riding in rammed into Fitzgerald's truck, and someone fired multiple shots at the vehicle. Thankfully though, he was unharmed. Hanawahine initially got away, but was captured several days later. He faces a slew of charges, including second-degree attempted murder, first-degree robbery, carrying or possessing a loaded firearm on a public highway, and use of a firearm in the commission of a felony. Hanawahine pleaded not guilty to all charges and was held on $1 million bail. As it turned out, he was no stranger to the law. He has at least 3 convictions on his record, including a terroristic threatening charge from 2018, as well as theft and burglary convictions stemming from 2 separate incidents in 2012. 6. Armed thief throws temper tantrum. Houston woman named Tina was standing by her car and talking on her phone in her workplace parking lot one day in July 2023 when an armed thief approached her from behind. He ordered Tina to hand over her keys, but when she refused, the suspect tried going into her pockets and purse, only to have his hand swatted away by the victim. And at one point, the suspect knocked Tina's medicine out of her purse. She seemed remarkably calm in surveillance footage of the botched robbery and was later commended for maintaining her composure throughout the interaction. Tina remained on the phone with her son throughout the ordeal, and when she told her son to dial 911 and continued refusing to hand over any of her property to the thief, the suspect ripped her phone out of her hand and smashed it against the pavement. He He then fled the scene on foot and remains at large. Police have since released the security video to the public in hopes that someone will be able to help them identify the suspect. 5. Richard Stiles. British pilot and career criminal Richard Stiles had a history of using his flying skills to move drugs around Europe. In 2003, he was caught trying to smuggle ecstasy tablets into Belgium. And while he was on the run from Belgian authorities later that year, he tried to drop a shipment of weed onto Jersey in the Channel Islands. Stiles was sentenced to 12 years in prison for his drug crimes. But during his time behind bars, he met a fellow inmate named Silvano Turchet, who would later become his partner in crime after their release. In 2017, Stiles and Turchet were arrested by Dutch authorities in a suspected people smuggling scheme. He was still awaiting trial on the charge in early 2022 when he was apprehended by Britain's National Crime Agency on suspicion of trying to smuggle 4 illegal Albanian immigrants into the United Kingdom. Stiles was then nabbed shortly after touching down at an airfield near Corby, Northamptonshire in a rented plane. And while being taken into custody, he joked about how he's usually arrested for drugs. Needless to say, the arresting agents were unamused by the distasteful humor. Investigators arrested Turchet after discovering that it helped organize the rental of the aircraft and paid to store it in a hangar. They believe the men coordinated with an Albanian man known as Tim K to arrange for the illegal immigrants to be picked up in Belgium and flown to England. A 43-year-old taxi driver named Vijaya Kumar Sivakumar was also arrested for his involvement in the smuggling scheme. The 3 men were each charged with 1 count of breaching immigration law. Stiles and Turchet admitted to the charge and received prison sentences of 7 years and 7.5 years. Sivakumar, on the other hand, was convicted by a jury and was only sentenced to 4.5 years behind bars. 4. Incompetent Irish hitmen. In a pitifully miscalculated attempt on a rival gangster's life, an associate of a notorious crime boss known only as Mr. Flashy was shot in the buttocks and hand one evening in the Finglas suburb outside Dublin. The incident in question happened outside a shop in December 2022 amid an ongoing drug-related feud between a gang led by Mr. Flashy and a rival organization. Mr. Flashy was at the scene when the shooting occurred. At the time, he and the victim were under strict bail requirements while awaiting the outcomes of unrelated cases. Investigators believe that the 2 suspects knew that the pair were required to check in at the police station and lied in wait nearby. But the shooter clearly had very bad aim, and the attempted murder didn't go as planned. The suspects fled in a taxi, being driven by a 3rd suspect, but they didn't get far before the car collided with another vehicle. And afterward, they fled the scene on foot. Social media users responded to the story with comments about how the incompetent hitman and the world's worst getaway driver made a hilariously terrible team with their combined lack of skills. At the time, the getaway driver was already facing a substantial prison sentence for a litany of other charges. When the story broke, authorities hadn't yet arrested the other 2 suspects and said that the matter was under investigation. The disturbing incident is just one of many incidences of violence that have happened amid the ongoing rivalry between the gangs. 3. Mark Cruz. A 27-year-old Florida man named Mark Cruz had at least 19 felony burglary, attempted burglary, and other convictions under his belt and was on parole for his previous crimes when he decided to steal a pickup truck in 2011. He deliberately crashed it into the entrance of a convenience store in Blackshire, hoping to loosen an ATM that was bolted to the floor. But when Cruz was unable to shake the machine free, he got back into the truck and drove into it 3 more times with the vehicle in reverse. Surveillance footage captured his numerous attempts to haul the ATM off before he finally gave up and fled the scene. A store clerk and a customer were standing nearby, watching in disbelief the entire time. Police caught up with Cruz a short while later, and during a search of the stolen vehicle they found a semi-automatic handgun. Cruz pleaded guilty to state-level charges of theft by receiving stolen property and first-degree criminal damage. Due to his lengthy criminal history, he was also federally charged in connection with the bungled robbery. He pleaded guilty to being an armed career criminal and being a felon in possession of a firearm. The judge sentenced him to a minimum of 15 years, which was generous considering how he could have gone away for life. Cruz was also sentenced to 10 years of probation in state court, with the requirement to serve it after he finished his federal sentence. 2. Peter Silva. During the summer of 2018, a Hiram, Utah man named Peter Silva embarked on a bizarre crime spree that began outside a convenience store, where he tried forcing his way into a stranger's vehicle. Silva allegedly told the victim that he needed to charge his phone, but had fled the scene by the time police arrived. 7 hours later, Cache County deputies found a stolen vehicle abandoned along a highway with a 9mm handgun inside. And while investigating the scene, law enforcement received a call about a burglary in progress. They arrived at the address to find a civilian holding Silva at gunpoint. Inside Silva's pockets, deputies found drugs, drug paraphernalia, and a payroll check belonging to the homeowner. He also had debit and credit cards that didn't belong to him, and a set of keys belonging to the stolen vehicle that had been found on the roadside. While sitting in the interview room down at the sheriff's station, Silva suffered electrical burns to his fingers from tampering with the light switch plate in an apparent attempt to cause a power outage. He received treatment for his injuries at a nearby hospital and was then taken to the local jail, where he was booked on multiple charges. During the booking process, he tried to blend in with some volunteers as they left the building. Staff members caught up with him though and took him back inside. As part of a plea bargain, Silva admitted to 3 felony counts, including burglary, 1 gun-related count, and 1 drug charge. He also pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of trying to escape from custody. And in exchange for his cooperation, prosecutors agreed to drop 8 other charges. Silva could have faced up to 15 years in prison, but the homeowner who held him at gunpoint asked the court to extend leniency toward the convicted criminal. The compassionate request stemmed from the homeowner's desire for Silva to work toward overcoming his addictions and getting his life on the right track. While speaking to the judge, the victim explained that he and Silva were strangers before the botched burglary, but that he'd gotten to know the defendant and felt sympathetic toward him and his family for their struggles. It was a more forgiving stance than the judge would have taken otherwise, but Silva seemed genuinely grateful for the second chance. He apologized to the victim in court and said that he truly wanted to change this time, and hopefully he meant it. 1. Alan Slattery. Over a several-week period during the spring of 2021, a 67-year-old British man named Alan Slattery committed a string of bank robberies in East Sussex, England. He carried out the heist by handing tellers a handwritten note demanding money, but his penmanship was a problem during one robbery when the cashier was unable to decipher the note. When she couldn't figure out what it said, Slattery fled the scene. According to the police, the note stated, "Your screen won't stop what I've got. Just hand over the 10s and 20s, think about the customers." Then, about a week later, Slattery made off with a few $1,000s after robbing a bank in the seaside town of St. Leonard's. The cashier later told investigators that the suspect was mostly silent throughout the heist and that she was afraid for her life, so she handed over the cash in accordance with the note's demands. Unlike the cashier in Slattery's previous bank robbery, she was luckily able to read it. Another week or so later, Slattery tried to rob a third bank. This time, the teller outright refused to comply with his handwritten demand for cash, and Slattery fled the scene empty-handed. During his arrest, police found post-it notes matching the ones he'd used to carry out his crimes, along with a jacket that matched the clothing he was seen wearing during one of the robberies. Slattery pleaded guilty to 3 counts of robbery and was sentenced to 6 years, with a minimum of 4 years behind bars. He'll be eligible to serve the final 2 years of his term on supervised release. What would be more embarrassing? Your partner becoming a national laughingstock for committing a horrendously stupid crime, or giving the public open access to your text conversations with your closest confidant, whom you tell everything for an entire week. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!